Hello, everyone, and welcome to our presentation on why leaders often lose their ethics and become corrupted once they obtain power. But first, what is a leader anyway? Well, there is no one set definition of leadership, rather, a multitude of theories of what makes a leader. However, a common basis that is shared is a level of authority over others. Furthermore, it is believed that leaders have influence on their subordinates' morals, or in some cases, society's moral values. Now, let's discuss some of the prominent leadership approaches and theories. The first is skills leadership. Skills leadership focuses on learnable traits, specifically three: technical skill, which is the ability to perform problem solution based tasks, such as computer technical tasks. Human skill is being able to work with people. It's strongly based in people skills, defined as assisting group members in working cooperatively to achieve common goals. Creating collaborative and trusting work environments is an essential human skills for leaders in this leadership style. Lastly, it focuses on conceptual skills, which is working with ideas and creating a vision for the future. It is especially important when shaping policies or tackling complex issues which bring the company's value at a forefront. Trait leadership, on the other hand, focuses primarily on a leader's personality traits and actually physical traits as well. Um, the primary, the two primary traits that are focused on in trait leadership is conscientiousness, which is the tendency to be dependable, reliable, goal-oriented, self-disciplined, deliberate, thorough, and decisive, as well as extroversion, which is the tendency to be social, assertive, warm, gregarious, active, adventurous, and positive. It is also hypothesized that there is an innate need for power inside of leaders. These leaders tend to seek compliance rather than approval. These leaders also tend to possess high cognitive, social, and emotional intelligence. This leadership approach can be dangerous as the leader can manipulate followers into unethical practices or working towards unethical goals just based on kind of bringing them in like through their personality. Adaptive leadership, on the other hand, is an approach that focuses on problems that are not straightforward, that brings ethics and values into the forefront of the problem. And the main overarching concept of it is about mobilizing people to address change. Adaptive leaders encourage effective change across multiple levels. So the levels are self, organization, community, and society. The responsibility of solving the problems depends on both the leader and their followers. The overarching theme is to also identify complex challenges and facilitate and guide hard discussions that result in positive solutions and change for the better. A good tangent also to this approach, which I'll mention quickly, is transformational leadership, which focuses on invoking the emotions of subordinates and has them adopt the leader's end values. However, there's also, contrary to this, there's pseudo transformational leadership, which takes this concept and puts it into action for malicious goals and uses manipulation to achieve its purposes. Lastly, we have servant leadership, which views leaders as servants to their followers, which means that they do everything possible to satisfy their followers or subordinates, even if it means inconveniencing themselves. So, like, an example of that would be something like setting a meeting at 8 a.m. or when it's inconvenient for them, or setting it in a location that's closer to their employees and far away from them because they view themselves as servants to their followers rather than like masters and above them. And it's pretty much based in like a high moral compass that they use to guide and reflect on every decision and goal with. And so well, it does appear that these approaches are generally based in achieving goals based on good morals, like such as some of the stuff we discussed about facilitation and kind of individual consideration. They can often be adapted to cause great harm in society, which we'll discuss later in this presentation. One thing to keep in mind throughout the presentation is the fact that we live in an interdependent and interconnected world. It could be reasoned that why part of leaders corrupt is due to pressures from those on their level and those above them.
Next, moving on into morality. Leaders' moral successes and failures have greater significance and volume than non-leaders. Morality is magnified in leadership, which is why the research on ethics is crucial for understanding of leadership. The study of ethics is concerned with human relationships. It is about what humans should do and be like as individuals, as members of a group or community, and the various roles we play in life. Power and or influence, vision, obligation, and responsibility are some characteristics of this responsibility. Acknowledging the morality of this relationship helps us understand leadership better because there are some core issues into ethics that are also central issues in leadership. Some of the most insightful work on management and ethics can be found in old texts, waiting to be relearned and reapplied. Researchers have previously provided insight that allows us to better comprehend leadership and establish contemporary research questions. History and philosophy shed light on the subject by revealing certain patterns of management and moral standards that have existed throughout history. They serve as a reminder that some of the most fundamental issues regarding the nature of leadership are linked to the human condition. Leadership scholars who are concerned with developing the ultimate meaning of leadership are posing the incorrect issue while attempting to answer the correct one. The ultimate leadership question is not what is the definition of leadership. We understand what leaders perform, but we'd like to understand the most effective way to do it. The whole purpose of researching leadership is to find out what constitutes good leadership. The term good has two meanings in this context: morally acceptable leadership and good technical leadership. For example, being effective at getting the job done at hand. The issue with this viewpoint is that we examine both past and current leaders to find, as we find some who fulfill both criteria and others who only meet one. History only adds to this confusion, as historians don't really write about leaders who were highly ethical and did nothing noteworthy. They struggle to write about an official who was a wonderful person but never came out on top. Most historians consider writing about winners or people who never changed the course of history, for the better or for the worse. Moral, moral luck is also another way to consider the free will or determination dilemma in ethics. People are held accountable for their free choices. We are not usually held accountable for things that we have no control over. The most complicated moral decisions leaders face are those in which they fully cannot predict the outcome of the situation. According to the philosopher Bernard Williams, moral luck is inherent in action depending on the manner in which the person thinks through the choice and whether his or her intentions are sound and turn out to be correct. He mentioned that moral luck is eccentric to a judgment. Aspects such as bad weather, accidents, malfunctioning machines, and so on can derail even in the best laid plans. Moral luck is just an essential part of morality and leadership, as it enables us to think about ethical decision making and risk assessment. Yeah, I'm done.
Now, so what is ethical and unethical leadership? As we explored ethical leadership in its different aspects, let's delve into another aspect: the consequences of ethical and unethical leadership. The importance of ethical issues in leadership and manager practices has increased as a result of numerous and well-known instances of failure on the part of organizations and people to uphold and follow ethical standards. Depending on the nature of the scandal or fraud, these organizations' unethical practices have led to varying degrees of fraud against the government, creditors, consumers, and workers. However, it can also have a positive impact on the relationship not only between the organization and its consumers, but the organization and its employees as well. So, what is ethical leadership? When it comes to leadership, ethics is concerned with what leaders do, who they are in terms of their conduct, their virtue, as well. Ethical considerations are either implicit or explicitly present when making leadership choices. Leaders' ethical decisions and actions are guided and informed by their own moral growth, which also has an impact on the decisions and actions. Ethical leadership is defined as leadership demonstrating and promoting normatively appropriate conduct through personal actions and interpersonal relations. When you boil it down, this really means that ethical leadership is defined as putting people into management and leadership positions who will promote and be an example of appropriate ethical conduct in their actions and relationships in the workplace. So what are the benefits of ethical leadership? According to Bass, a company that is fully permeated with transformational leadership from top to bottom conveys to its own personnel as well as to its shareholders and stakeholders, and the community at large, that it's focused and confident, which is necessary for a stable and growing company on both a short-term and long-term basis. This entails a better public perception of the business, the restoration or enhancement of investor confidence, the prevention and reduction of fines and penalties related to criminal activity, the avoidance of employee lawsuits brought by those who are unable to have their complaints addressed through the company systems, and increased productivity, better market orientation, and better leadership due to better customer care and satisfaction, thus establishing a standard for others in the market to follow and raising the organization or institution's profile. So let's go into an example of ethical leadership. Lincoln appeared to be a born leader. He's recognized as one of the best presidents in American history because of his ability to dominate a room and deliver an impactful speech and negotiate. As a leader, Lincoln was committed to keeping a country from disintegrating completely. There are many great qualities about Lincoln, but we will focus on how his leadership was ethical. Lincoln displayed something called altruism. He wanted to abolish slavery even if it meant a major pushback from a large portion of the country. He demonstrated moral leadership by making a moral choice, prioritizing others and approaching slavery from the perspective of an enslaved person. On the basis of a natural law, he effectively adopted critical thinking and ended slavery in America. So let's go into what is unethical leadership. Unethical leadership can result in decisions that are frequently self-serving rather than selfless, focused on the short term rather than the long term, and superficial rather than insightful. This indicates that while unethical behavior may initially seem alluring or profitable, its long-term implications are unfavorable. An ethical dilemma is usually present whenever there is unethical leadership, a moral situation in which a decision must be made between two equally undesirable options is described as an ethical dilemma by Fernando. These situations can arise for a variety of reasons, including attitude, behavior, failure of personal character, conflict of personal values, and organizational goals versus social goals. When a decision maker for an organization must choose between two or more solutions that will have a different effects on profitability, competitiveness, or possibly stakeholders in general, they are in a quandary. So let's go into the consequences of unethical leadership. Many people have turned to unethical business practice as a result of increased business competition and the wish to succeed at all costs. That can result in factors that encourage unethical behavior, such as dominant organizational culture that encourages an unethical behavior, a lack of business trust, a lack of supporting values, or a failure to comply to lax legal and organizational policies, procedures, and guidelines. Inappropriate organizational leadership role modeling, and the setting of unrealistic and unreachable organizational goals. Such events can have disastrous consequences of everyone concerned. So let's go into an example of unethical leadership. A prime example of unethical leadership in play is the Joe Fresh incident that occurred in Bangladesh. The 2013 Rana Plaza factory collapse, also known as the 2013 Savar building collapse, or the collapse of Rana Plaza, was a structural failure that took place on April 24, 2013, in the Savar Upzela of the Dhaka district in Bangladesh, and resulted in the collapse of an 8-story commercial building known as Rana Plaza. It happened as a result of problems such as the building being constructed on an unstable site, construction regulations being broken, purchased building supplies cheaply, and the authorities taking bribes to turn a blind eye. The circumstances were ideal for a catastrophe to occur due to corruption. The leadership in Joe Fresh decided not only to cut costs by bypassing laws, but also putting at risk the people that work in such a factory. This is a prime example of immoral management, and the fact that Joe Fresh are willing to exploit opportunity for corporate gain.
Okay, so my research was on the social role theory of unethical leadership. The aim of the research was to find out if leaders' ethical failures would be significantly caused by the social role expectation of leaders. And this is an introduction to the theory. The theory was that the leader role itself can overinflate an individual's felt responsibility and confidence in the importance of the collective goals, thus inducing them to engage in unethical behavior in order to attain those goals. The researchers also set out to establish why power is not a contributing factor to immorality in leaders. The way they did this is so their theory was that power is associated with many negative effects, such as ignoring other people and objectifying people. But They also said that these effects were associated with self-interest, which is driven by and contrary to the effect of a leader's social role on unethical behavior, because the leader's role is to exert influence in the service of collective goals. So that is the way they isolated the factor of power from that of a leadership's goals. They also said that, okay, the next part was the first experiment that they conducted. This experiment set out to measure an individual's valuations of goals if they were put in different positions. The two positions surveyed were people who were told that they were in a leadership position and people who were told that they were part of a member in an organization. As you can see in the survey results, those that were leaders had higher importance for goals, and those that were members had a lower importance for the goals. In the second experiment, they made different people think that they had more or less power over other people, and they were either leaders or members of an organization. In the observation, we can see that those in the leader condition report significantly greater goal importance than those in the high power condition or those in the member condition. The second observation was that people's view of goal importance in the leader condition did not differ a lot from those that were in the lower power condition, which was, so that was the second experiment. Oh boy. The third experiment is, okay. In the third experiment, this study involved manipulating a person's idea of leadership. And so some people were told that they were part of a for-profit company, and others were told that they were part of a non-profit organization. Other people were also told that leadership had the exclusive objective of attaining certain goals. And other people were also told that leaders had to uphold certain ethical standards. As you can see in the results, each person was given a certain scenario, a common scenario, and the scenario was as follows. Your organization recently received a monetary prize in recognition of its success. In order to receive the prize money, you had to agree to use it in the way directed by the award committee. However, you now believe that the resources should go elsewhere in order to further your organization's goals. Information regarding how the prize money will be spent is never published or disclosed to anyone, so no one will find out how the funds were utilized. The participants were presented with this scenario, and they were asked to make a decision on whether they would stick to the committee's rules on where they'd spend the monetary amount, the money, or if they would deviate from those rules and spend it elsewhere where they felt it was required. And as we can see in the results, the people who were leaders had a higher goal focus, and therefore they had a high justification for spending the amount in their own arbitrary way. The people who were not were not given any input on what leadership is, had a significantly lower justification for spending the amount in the unethical manner. And the people with the ethics focus had the lowest amount of justification for spending it in the unethical manner. We observed something similar for a for-profit and a non-profit people. The people in the for-profit companies showed a significantly higher level of justification for spending the amount in their own manner in comparison for the people that were in non-profit. So that was the third experiment. And the fourth experiment. So in the fourth experiment, the aim of the study was to measure a participant's self-reported intention to engage in unethical behaviors. They assessed this by presenting an opportunity to the participants to cheat on certain problems. As we can see in the results, the people who were leaders, they had a higher goal importance and also made a higher level of unethical decisions, whereas people who were just members of the organization had a lower goal importance and made unethical decisions less frequently. So the conclusion of this experiment was that taking on a leadership role can be associated with increased valuing of the group's goals and potentially an increased willingness to engage in ethically questionable behavior in the service of these goals. So, all of this being said, I personally feel that this experiment had one major flaw in the fact that it was conducted using undergraduate people as participants. So the whole experiment is based on what people think they would do instead of what they have done or what they would have done. No, what they have done in the past based on experience. So that could be used as a way to contend that the experiment results are not very accurate because more often than not, what people think they would do is not what we end up doing.
Ethics in terms of action, leadership corruption. Adding on to why leaders often lose their ethics and become corrupted once they obtain power. The article that I reviewed is titled, "The More You Exploit, the More Expedient I Will Be. A Moral Disengagement and Chinese Traditionality Examination of Exploitative Leadership and Employee Expediency," and was written by the Asia Pacific Journal of Management. So here's a quick summary of the article. The article explored the relationship between exploitative leadership and employee expediency, with a focus on the mediating role of moral disengagement and the moderating role of Chinese traditionality. Drawing on social cognitive theory, the study found that exploitative leadership is positively related to employee expediency, and that this relationship is mediated by moral disengagement. Additionally, Chinese traditionality was found to moderate the relationship between exploitative leadership and moral disengagement, buffering the effect of exploitative leadership on employees with higher levels of Chinese traditionality. Exploitative leadership and employee expediency. First, let's understand what exploitative leadership is. Exploitative leadership refers to a leadership style characterized by leaders who prioritize their own goals, often at the expense of their employees. These leaders treat employees as a means to achieve their personal objectives and frequently impose excessive pressure on them to complete tasks. Exploitative leaders may also exploit their employees' work for their personal gain, neglect employee development opportunities, and show a general lack of support and respect. As a result, this can lead to exploit expediency. Expediency refers to unethical behaviors that employees adopt in order to complete tasks more quickly or to cope with the stressful environment created by exploitative leaders. These behaviors typically have low moral intensity and may involve cutting corners, bending rules, or taking credit for others' work. As employees are exposed to exploitative leadership, they may come to believe that such expedient behaviors are acceptable or even necessary in order to survive and succeed within the organization. The mediating role of moral disengagement. To continue, the article also spoke about moral disengagement. Moral disengagement refers to a set of cognitive justification mechanisms that enable individuals to engage in unethical behavior while avoiding feelings of guilt or moral self-sanctions. These mechanisms may involve displacing responsibility, such as blaming others for their actions, disregarding the negative consequences of their actions, and vilifying the recipients of unethical behavior, or dehumanizing or blaming the victims. There is a strong connection between exploitative leadership, moral disengagement, and employee expediency. Exploitative leaders create a stressful work environment that can lead employees to engage in moral disengagement. As employees morally disengage, they may feel justified in adopting expedient behaviors as they attribute their actions to the pressure exerted by their leaders, minimizing the negative impact of their actions, or believe that those affected by their actions deserve the negative consequences. This moral disengagement then facilitates the relationship between exploitative leadership and employee expediency. The moderating role of Chinese traditionality. In order to better understand the article, here is a definition of Chinese traditionality. Chinese traditionality refers to the extent to which an individual adheres to traditional Chinese cultural values, which often involves submission to authority and obedience to prescribed social roles. People with high levels of Chinese traditionality are more likely to accept and follow the guidance of senior persons and view the chief government official as the head of a household. Chinese traditionality has a moderating effect on the relationship between exploitative leadership and moral disengagement. Employees with higher levels of Chinese traditionality are less sensitive to exploitative leadership, as they may view such behavior as a common phenomenon. This reduced sensitivity can buffer the effects of exploitative leadership on moral disengagement. As a result, employees with high Chinese traditionality are less likely to engage in moral disengagement and subsequently adopt expedient behavior. In contrast, employees with lower levels of Chinese traditionality are more influenced by the imbalance of inducement and contribution under exploitative leadership and may respond more strongly, leading to an increased moral disengagement and employee expediency. Social cognitive theory and change in values. Social cognitive theory posits that individuals' cognition and behavior are determined by the interaction of situational and personal factors. This theory suggests that people learn and adapt their behavior based on their environment and the influences around them. When individuals acquire control or leadership positions, several factors can contribute to changes in their values. For example, new leaders may adopt values that align with the prevailing organizational culture, even if those values are exploitative or unethical. Additionally, power can corrupt individuals, leading them to prioritize their own goals and engage in selfish behavior and exploitation of others. This can result in a shift in values towards self-serving interests. Furthermore, unethical behavior may become justified through moral disengagement, which allows individuals to rationalize their actions and displace responsibility. This cognitive process can lead to a change in values and increased engagement in expedient behavior. Article conclusion. To sum up, one reason why individuals may change and forego their values when they acquire power is due to the nature of power itself. Power can be addictive, and individuals may become more focused on maintaining and increasing their power than on upholding their moral values. They may also become more willing to justify their unethical behavior in order to maintain their power, leading to a process of moral disengagement. In the case of exploitative leadership, individuals who gain power may view their subordinates as a means to an end, rather than as individuals with their own needs and desires. They may prioritize their own interests over the interests of their subordinates, leading to a breakdown in the moral relationship between leaders and subordinates. This breakdown may cause subordinates to engage in moral disengagement in order to justify their own behavior, as they may feel that they have no other choice in order to succeed or protect them from harm. Lastly, when individuals acquire control, they may change or forego their values due to the influence of exploitative leadership, moral disengagement, and the moderating effect of personal factors such as Chinese traditionality. Understanding these factors can help organizations create an ethical work environment and promote positive leadership practices.
So, as we have discussed ethics and leadership, we have come to the conclusion that ethics play a large role in leadership. Morality, social role theory, the consequences of unethical and ethical leadership, and the maintenance of power through self-serving purposes are all reasons of how ethics play a large role in leadership. We've provided specific examples such as Abraham Lincoln's leadership and the scandal of Joe Fresh's factory collapse as outcomes of different types of leadership. We then use case studies to show that social roles of a leader is a significant cause of unethical decisions taken. Finally, we summarize the report saying that employees with higher levels of Chinese traditionality are less sensitive to exploitative leadership. In the end, the ethics of a leader or leadership have great effects on everyone involved.